In this video, we're going to talk about events. We'll build an event, and we'll also tie events into measures. Let's get started. Before we do, though, you might notice that there is a bit of a change in my configuration tool. I'm demoing version number 7. This is still in the beta, but you'll notice that there's been a style change. So our flow zone has some refreshed icons. The font has changed, more padding, a bit more clear of a layout, easier to read. And also we've relocated the tabs from the bottom of the left and right menu to the top. And this gives you a much easier and smoother workflow. We hope you'll enjoy it. All right, so we'll take an event from the flow zone and we'll go ahead and drag it underneath of a folder, in this case our filler 001. And this is going to be a product type that we are monitoring. Let's take a look over at our data source. And you might remember that inside of our Juice Factory demo, we have a product tag. This product tag is an integer value that changes as our product changes. And those values can range from 1 through 4. And we have an idle state of 0 where we're changing over our simulated line. So it's really easy to create an event. All I need to do is open up the event that I've drug over from the flow zone. I can give it a description. I can set a refresh offset. I can create rules around minimum or maximum duration of an event, and I can control my backfill. But any event, in order for it to work, needs to have both a start trigger defined and then an optional end trigger if it's not just when the start trigger is no longer true. You'll notice that there is some documentation here around all of the different things you can use for triggers. So we can bring over a data source or a namespace item to create a trigger. We can bring in a calendar so that we can create a time-based trigger, and we can also stack events and use another event we've defined for an event-based trigger. An event with only a start trigger will automatically end when the next start trigger is detected. All right, so let's bring the product tag over, and we're just going to drag it and drop it into the trigger space. And you'll see that that creates a start trigger, and we'll do the exact same thing again to create our end trigger. Now for the start trigger, we'll say that when the condition becomes true, where the product tag is equal to or greater than 1, that will be the start of our event. And for the end trigger, when it returns to 0, is the end of our event. There are all kinds of different conditions that we can use, as well as creating custom expressions, but this is just the most basic introduction to events. So for now, we'll just continue with our simple use case. Now this is going to give me the start period of the event and the end period of the event from which Flow will calculate the duration, but it's not going to give me any other metadata. So in order to get metadata and associate that metadata and store it, along with the event start and stop information, we will need to create an attribute. And I just simply right-click and select New to create an attribute. And I can choose whether I want my attribute to be retrieved from a data source, to be manually entered through a flow form, or to be calculated. We'll just do a simple retrieval, and this will be our product type. Now our product type is currently expressed here with the product tag. I'll drag it and drop it. And this would now record whether we were making type 1, 2, 3, or 4 product as part of this event. I would like to have more detail than an integer value of 1, 2, 3, or 4. And in order to create that, we will use the Tools menu, and we will make an enumeration. I don't currently have any enumerations already created, so I'll right-click and I'll go to New. My enumeration can be based off of a lookup table, or it can be static. We'll build a static one, and this is going to be our juice type. Double-click on juice type, opens it inside of my window, and currently I have no ordinals created. I right-click and I do a new, and we'll do this 4 times for each of my 4 potential product types. So when the value is equal to 1, we are making what type of juice? Let's say grape, cherry, OJ, and how about cranberry? All right. Now, from the enumeration setting, I can now choose my juice type. And with this, I'm ready to deploy. So this will now backfill. It'll look back across my history. And every time from the 1st of August until today, which is September the 11th, any time that we have the beginning of a new product, Flow will record that start time. When it transitions back to a 0 idle state, that will be the end of our event. And then we will record not just what was the value 1, 2, 3, or 4, but we will match it to our enumeration. So let's take a look and see if that's already been done. And we can see that here's some brief history available to me so that I can take a look at what's been happening. And I can see most recently, starting at 5 a.m. this morning and completing at 2:03, we were making grape. There was a break and idle period in between our previous grape production run as well. So that is how I create an event. Now, how do I tie an event back into a measure? Let's take a look at our good tag and create a daily measure from our good tag. So remember, I just drag the tag, drop it onto the daily flow zone icon. This becomes daily. If you remember last time when we have a totalizer, we come into retrieval and we change the aggregate type to counter. And from here, I'd be ready to deploy this measure, except I haven't added any of my event context. So in my context area, right now, the only context that this is being based on is my production calendar. If I bring my product type and drag it down and drop it into the context window, it will now also contextualize this measure based on what was the product type that we were making. So every day, I would expect to get a total for how many bottles did we produce for the day from 6 a.m. until 6 a.m. the next day. And now I'm also going to tell it to bring back the product type that we were making, the attribute of the product type event. It's important that you drag both of those items on. You might have many different attributes associated to an event, and you may not want all of those attributes to travel with the event when you bring it into the measure. Therefore, we give you the flexibility to decide which attributes you want. That means that any attributes you want must be dragged in to the context window and dropped underneath of the event. So now I can deploy this. This will backfill back to the first. I can let that run for just a little bit. And as that's backfilling, I can also then, just as I have before with my other measures, I can bring this and drop it in on top of, say, the W, and this is now weekly, and I can bring the weekly and create a monthly. And as a result of doing this, I will now have event context for all three of these measures available to me. All right, so we've backfilled. My production data is now showing two different pieces of information. It is showing me from 6 a.m. yesterday morning till 6 a.m. this morning, what was my total value? How many bottles did I produce that were good? 662,000 and some change. And of that 662,000, notice that we have two different production runs. We have a grape and we have a cranberry, and there was the total from those. Previous day, more information, total made, and then broken across three different product types. So as you can imagine, this becomes extremely valuable. The flexibility of the events allows me to do things like batch ID, batch number, lot number, product type, customer information, even personnel information, operators. I can bring in things like utility usage, or start associating how much utility usage did I use per product type, and the list goes on and on. In our next video, we are going to focus on using the events to track downtime and being able to give our frontline workers, our operators, the ability to actually codify that downtime. I hope you'll join me on the next video. Thanks.